The twin suns of Erebos 9 hung low in the sky, painting the metal domes of the colony with shades of orange and gold. The air shimmered with heat, and the dust storms far beyond the city walls whispered softly across the barren plains. Life on Erebos 9 was not easy. Every breath, every drop of water, every seed that dared to grow had to be earned. The colonists, a mix of alien races from distant worlds, lived under strict laws and even stricter hopes. And then, one morning, everything changed. A soft chime echoed through every sector, followed by the calm metallic voice of the overseer. "Attention, citizens. The Lottery of Unity will begin tomorrow. All registered beings are required to enter. One winner will be chosen to receive the honor of partnership with the human asset." The message repeated 3 times, then faded into silence. The colony erupted in murmurs. The words human asset carried a strange weight, something mysterious, almost sacred. Many had heard the stories of a lone human kept under observation deep within the research sector. Few had seen him. Fewer still believed he truly existed. For the aliens of Erebos 9, humans were half myth, half miracle. They were said to be creatures of deep feeling, able to cry, laugh, and love in ways no other species could. To them, humans were dangerous because they felt too much. The thought that one of them would be bonded with a human set the colony ablaze with excitement and fear. Across the domes, shopkeepers closed early to gossip. Workers whispered during their shifts, and children asked their parents what it meant to win a human. Some called it an honor, others called it madness. But one thing was certain: everyone wanted to win. Except for the human himself, Elias Ward, who had no idea what was about to happen. Elias lived inside a quiet, sterile chamber far beneath the colony. The walls were white, the lights soft and endless, and a transparent barrier separated him from the outside world. He wasn't mistreated. The overseers provided food, books, and even music from Earth's archives. But it wasn't freedom. It was a life of observation. Every day, researchers came and went, studying him with polite fascination. They asked questions about his emotions, about pain and hope, about why humans dreamed when they slept. They said it was all for science, to understand what made humans so different. But sometimes when Elias looked into their cold, reptilian eyes, he felt like they didn't just want to study him. They wanted to be him. He often stood by the glass wall, staring at the distorted reflection of his own face, the only human face on this whole planet. He had once dreamed of returning to Earth, of feeling real sunlight and wind again. But Earth was gone. Or at least, that's what they told him. He wondered if the stars outside still remembered the humans who used to look up at them. That night, Elias couldn't sleep. He felt something in the air, a strange energy flowing through the facility. Guards moved faster, researchers whispered nervously, and the overseer's voice echoed faintly in distant halls. He sat on his bed, staring at the dim lights above. "A lottery," he murmured to himself. What could they possibly be gambling for this time? He had seen the colony's lotteries before, games of chance to win rations, housing upgrades, even citizenship. But this one felt different. He could sense it in the way the aliens avoided his gaze that day, the way the lights dimmed every time he asked a question. Something was happening, something involving him. Up on the surface, excitement grew into chaos. Every alien, no matter their status or clan, registered for the Lottery of Unity. They decorated their homes, made offerings, and even prayed, not to their gods but to fate itself. In the great plaza, holographic banners glowed with the words, "The human will choose." No one knew exactly what that meant. Was the human going to choose his partner, or was the system going to assign them? No one dared to ask. Curiosity overpowered fear. Far below, Elias stood by the window of his cell, watching the artificial sunrise projected onto the colony's ceiling. It was beautiful, but it wasn't real. He pressed his hand against the glass and whispered, "Sometimes I forget what real light feels like. A guard standing nearby looked at him with quiet sympathy. "Tomorrow," the guard said, "everything will change." Elias turned toward him. "What do you mean?" But the guard didn't answer. He only smiled, a strange, almost reverent smile, and whispered, "You'll understand soon, human. You're not just part of the colony anymore, though you're the prize." The morning after the announcement, the entire colony buzzed with restless excitement. Every street, every dome, every corridor hummed with voices talking about only one thing: the lottery of unity. Aliens of all kinds stood in long, glowing lines waiting to register their names. Their eyes shimmered with hope and pride. For them, this wasn't just a game of luck. It was destiny. To be chosen by the human asset meant glory, honor, and something even greater: a connection to a being from the lost world called Earth. Inside the deepest part of the research sector, Elias Ward sat quietly in his room, unaware that his name was now whispered in every home across Erebos 9. His chamber was clean, bright, and lonely. A transparent wall divided him from the alien, scientists who often watched him like children staring at a rare animal. The walls had no windows, no doors he could open, only the illusion of space. Even time felt heavy there, slow and endless. That morning, he woke to find a new team of researchers outside the glass. They were dressed in dark silver suits, their faces covered by thin helmets that shimmered with blue light. "Elias Ward," one of them said, his voice echoing softly through the intercom. "How do you feel today?" Elias gave a tired smile. "Like someone trapped inside a fishbowl," he answered. The alien tilted his head, puzzled. "Fishbowl? It means, I can see the world, but I can't touch it." There was silence. The alien didn't understand, but one of them, a younger researcher with bright eyes, seemed to feel something in that sentence. Her gaze lingered on him longer than the others. As the day went on, Elias noticed unusual movement. Guards patrolled the hallways more often. Technicians installed new lights, and a strange golden emblem was placed above his chamber, a spiral surrounded by 3 stars. He didn't know what it meant, but it looked like a sign. He pressed his palm against the glass and whispered, "What are you all preparing for?" No one answered. Later that evening, the young researcher, the one who had looked at him differently, returned alone. Her name tag glowed softly, Zira Keltath. She carried a small metallic sphere that projected a gentle melody, not alien, but something human. Elias recognized it instantly. It was an old Earth song, Claire de Lune. His heart tightened. "Where did you get that?" Zira hesitated, then said softly, "From your world's archives. I thought you might like to hear it." The music filled the room, slow and beautiful, wrapping them both in a fragile peace. Elias closed his eyes. For a moment, he could almost see the moonlight on the oceans of Earth, the way it danced on the waves. He could almost hear his mother humming that tune when he was a child. When he opened his eyes again, Zira was watching him closely, curious, almost emotional. "Why does it make you sad and happy at the same time?" she asked gently. Elias smiled faintly. "That's what humans do best," he said. "We feel both at once." Zira didn't respond, but her golden eyes shimmered with something new, something that looked a lot like understanding. Hours later, after she left, Elias lay awake on his narrow bed. The music still echoed softly in his mind. He tried to hold on to the feeling, but it hurt, because it reminded him how far he was from everything he loved. He turned his gaze to the camera in the corner. "If you're watching," he said quietly, "I'm not your experiment. I'm not your prize. I'm just a man who misses his home." But somewhere behind that camera, the overseer watched silently, unmoving. The humans' sadness fascinated them. They didn't understand how emotion could be so strong, so real that it changed the air around him. To them, Elias wasn't just human anymore. He was something greater, a living key to feelings their kind had long forgotten. Outside, as night fell over Erebos 9, the colony's central dome lit up with thousands of glowing symbols. The lottery was only hours away. Every name was entered, every soul waiting for the draw, and deep underground, a lonely human sat beneath artificial light, listening to a song from a world that no longer existed. He didn't know that soon, when the lottery ended. His life would never be the same again. He didn't know that someone somewhere would win the right to stand beside him. He didn't know that he was the prize everyone dreamed of. Elias closed his eyes and whispered to himself, "Whatever they plan tomorrow, I just hope it finally means something." The soft hum of the colony answered him like a heartbeat, steady and alive. Tomorrow the world would change, and for the first time in years, Elias would no longer be alone. The next morning came with a strange kind of silence. The colony of Arivos 9, usually filled with the hum of machines and chatter of workers, now held its breath. Every citizen, from the highest overseer to the youngest child, waited for the start of the lottery of unity. Inside the great dome, thousands of glowing figures gathered. Their scales shimmered under the bright lights, reflecting every color imaginable. Blue for calm, gold for pride, and red for burning excitement. Above them floated a massive crystal sphere, spinning slowly in midair. Inside it were thousands of names, each one glowing like a tiny star. The overseer stood before the crowd, his voice echoing across the hall. "Today, one among you will be chosen by fate, chosen to bond with the human asset." A wave of whispers rushed through the audience. The words carried both fear and desire. For many, this was a chance to touch history, to connect with the last of a species that once ruled the stars. In that moment, every being in the room held on to a single dream: to be chosen. Meanwhile, deep below the dome, Elias Ward sat in his quiet chamber. He could hear the faint echo of voices from above, but he didn't know what they were saying. The guards had been replaced by soldiers today, standing tall and silent. Even the air felt different, charged like a storm about to break. He walked to the glass wall, pressing his hand against it. "What's happening out there?" he asked softly. "Why all the noise?" No one answered. The soldiers avoided his gaze, staring straight ahead like statues. Elias sighed and sat down on his bed. "Guess I'm still the last to know," he muttered. But far above him, his fate was already being written. The overseer raised a glowing staff. The crystal sphere stopped spinning. A hush fell over the crowd as a single golden light floated out of the sphere, rising slowly before projecting a name into the air: Zyra Keltath. For a second, everything was silent. Then the dome erupted in cheers. Zira, the young researcher who had played Elias's song the night before, froze in shock. Her hands trembled as every eye in the crowd turned toward her. The bright golden glow wrapped around her like a crown, marking her as the winner. She felt her heart pounding, her mind spinning. She hadn't even wanted to enter. It was mandatory. Everyone had to. She had thought her name would get lost among thousands, but now she stood at the center of attention, the chosen one. An official approached her. "Congratulations, Zyra Keltath," he said. "You have won the bonding." She blinked. "Bonding?" Her voice shook. "What does that mean? What will happen to me?" The official smiled politely, his eyes cold. "It means you will meet the human." They escorted her through long metallic corridors deeper and deeper beneath the colony. The lights dimmed and the air grew colder. Zyra's hands clenched tightly as she tried to calm her breathing. Her heart raced not from fear but from something she didn't understand: curiosity. Finally, the doors opened with a hiss. She stepped inside a quiet room filled with soft white light, and there he was. The human Elias turned toward her, his expression puzzled. Behind the glass he looked both strong and fragile, his eyes tired yet full of warmth. His hair was unkempt, his face pale, but when he looked at her, something inside her chest moved. He took a slow step forward. "Who are you?" he asked softly. Zyra couldn't find her voice. She had studied humans all her life, read their books, watched their history, listened to their songs. But seeing one in person was different. He looked alive. Finally she whispered, "My name is Zyra Keltath." Elias smiled faintly. "You're not like the others." She blinked, confused. "Others?" "The ones who watch me," he said. "Their eyes feel cold. But yours—" He paused, searching for the word. "Yours feel alive." Zyra's chest tightened. No one had ever said something like that to her. Her people didn't speak in emotions. They spoke in logic and facts. But this human, his words carried warmth. From the corner of the room, the overseer's voice broke the silence. Congratulations, Zyra. You have been chosen to begin the bonding with the human asset. You are now connected by the will of the colony. Zyra turned sharply. Bonding? What does that mean? The overseer's tone was calm. The human's essence, his emotions, will merge with yours. Together you will create something new, something greater than either of you alone. Zyra looked back at Elias. His eyes met hers, uncertain, curious, and strangely gentle. I didn't ask for this, she whispered. Elias nodded slowly. Neither did I. For a long moment they just stood there, separated by glass, staring at each other as if searching for the truth in each other's eyes. Outside, the colony celebrated. Fireworks of plasma burst in the sky, lights filled the domes, and every alien shouted the winner's name. But deep below, where the music of celebration could not reach, two souls simply stared, a human and an alien, both wondering what fate had planned for them next. And in that silence, a spark was born, something that no law, no overseer, no experiment could ever control. The room was quiet after the overseer left. Only the soft hum of the machines filled the air, glowing faintly behind the glass wall that separated Elias and Zyra. She stood frozen, her golden eyes still wide from what she had just heard. Bonding. The word echoed in her mind like thunder. She had come to the research facility thinking it would be just another observation, maybe a conversation with a human. But now, it felt like something else entirely. Elias noticed her trembling hands. You're scared, he said softly. Zyra looked at him quickly as if his words had caught her off guard. You're kind. You can tell that? Elias gave a small, sad smile. It's not hard. Fear looks the same on every face. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The silence between them felt heavy but strangely peaceful. Zyra stepped closer to the glass, studying him. His eyes weren't like the cold blue of her kind. They were deep, warm, filled with something alive. You know, Elias said quietly, I still don't know why I'm here. They say I'm helping them study emotions, but no one ever tells me the truth. Zyra hesitated. You don't know about the lottery? He shook his head slowly. Lottery? Her heart sank. She realized then, and he didn't know. The overseers hadn't told him anything. He wasn't part of the plan. He was the plan. Later that evening, Zyra was escorted to the overseer's chamber. The tall, silver-skinned leader stood before a wall of holographic data. His glowing eyes turned toward her. You performed well, he said. The human responded to you. The emotional link has begun to form. Zyra frowned. Link, what are you doing to him? The overseer turned, his tone calm and patient. Humans possess a unique energy, emotion that fuels action, creation, even destruction. They can love fiercely, hate completely, and hope endlessly. We lost that long ago. Our species cannot feel like they do. He paused, then added, the bonding will allow a transfer, a sharing of his emotional energy. If successful, we can learn to feel again. We can become more. Zyra's heart raced. You're using him like a tool? The overseer's expression didn't change. We are preserving what is left of humanity. Through us, his kind will live forever. She shook her head slowly. No, through this you'll erase him. The overseer's voice grew cold. Be careful, Zyra. Do not let emotion cloud your judgment, but that warning only made her realize something deeper. She was feeling, fear, anger, compassion, all emotions her people had long considered weaknesses, and all of them came from him. When Zyra returned to the research chamber, Elias was sitting by the glass waiting. He looked up when he saw her. You were gone for a while, he said gently. Did you find out what this is all about? She hesitated, her heart heavy with guilt. I did. He looked at her curiously. And Zyra took a deep breath. They're trying to take something from you. Not your body. Not your mind. Your emotions, the thing that makes you human. Elias was quiet for a long time. His eyes darkened, and when he finally spoke, his voice was low and steady. So that's it, he whispered. They don't want to understand us. They want to be us. Zyra pressed her hand to the glass. I'm sorry. I didn't know. I never wanted this. He placed his hand against hers from the other side. The cold glass separated them, but in that moment they felt something real. It's not your fault, he said softly. You didn't choose this either. Her golden eyes glowed faintly, a rare emotional shimmer that no Erebosian had shown in generations. When I look at you, she whispered, I feel something I can't name. It's warm, it's alive. Elias smiled gently. That's called feeling. That's what makes life worth living. Zira's voice trembled. Then I want to feel more of it. The overseer watched from behind the hidden glass walls, recording every moment. To him, it was data. The first successful emotional reaction from an Erebosian in centuries. But to Zira and Elias, it was something far greater. It was connection. That night, Zira couldn't sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw his face, heard his voice, and felt that strange warmth spreading in her chest. She knew what the overseers planned next. The real bonding process would begin soon, and once it did, Elias might not survive. She sat by her window, staring into the twin moons, her scales glowing faint blue, the color of sorrow. For the first time in her life, she whispered a word she had never spoken before, a word she had only read about in human stories. Hope. And far below, in the silence of his chamber, Elias whispered into the darkness, if they're going to take my emotions, I'll make sure they understand what it truly means to feel. He didn't know how. He didn't know when. But somewhere deep inside, a human heart began to fight back. Days passed and something changed inside the research chamber. The cold, sterile silence that had once filled the air began to soften. The conversations between Elias and Zira grew longer, warmer, and strangely human. At first, Zira had come only for observation. She was supposed to record Elias's responses, study his emotions, and report to the overseer. But with each visit, she found herself forgetting her purpose. She wasn't there as a scientist anymore. She was there because she wanted to be. Elias noticed the change too. Every time she entered, the lights in the room felt a little brighter. The air felt lighter. For a man who had spent years surrounded by silence, her presence was like sunlight after endless rain. One morning, Zira brought him something new, a small glass orb that projected floating lights in the air. It's called a stellar bloom, she said softly. It grows light instead of leaves. Elias watched in wonder as the orb opened like a flower, scattering faint blue glimmers that hovered above them. They looked like stars. He smiled for the first time in weeks. It reminds me of home, he said. Zira tilted her head. Your Earth? Yes, Elias whispered. Back on Earth, there were nights where you could lie on the grass and see thousands of stars. It felt like they were watching over you. I used to think each one was a wish someone made. Zira looked up at the floating lights, her golden eyes softening. And what did you wish for? He chuckled quietly. Freedom, maybe, but mostly to not be alone. Her chest tightened. You're not alone anymore. The words slipped from her lips before she could stop them. For a moment, the air went still between them. She looked away quickly, her scales glowing faint gold, the color of warmth. Elias stared at her quietly, a gentle smile forming on his face. Thank you, he said simply. As the days turned to weeks, Zira began to teach Elias about her world, how the colony survived the harsh storms, how their people communicated through the colors of their skin, and how their hearts beat in harmony with the energy of the planet. In return, Elias taught her about emotions. He told her about laughter, about grief, about what it meant to dream. He described rain, the sound of droplets against glass, the smell of wet soil, the peace it brought. Zira listened, eyes closed as if trying to imagine the feeling of something she'd never known. Rain sounds beautiful, she whispered. We have storms here too, but they only destroy. Sometimes destruction brings life, Elias said softly. That's what rain does. It hurts the sky before it heals the ground. Zira looked at him in silence. His words always felt simple, yet they carried something powerful. Something that touched places inside her she didn't know existed. One evening, the power flickered through the research wing. The lights dimmed, alarms buzzed faintly, and for a few precious minutes the energy field around the glass barrier weakened. Elias looked at her, confused. What's happening? Maintenance, Zira said quickly, her voice nervous. The field resets once every cycle. He stepped closer to the glass, noticing how faint it had become, like a thin mist. He could almost see her without the wall between them. Zira hesitated, then raised her hand. If you move closer, maybe you can feel it. Elias slowly lifted his hand, and when their palms touched the barrier, the faint hum vanished. For the first time he felt warmth, not from the glass, but from her. Zira gasped softly. Her skin glowed gold and blue in a rare mix of emotion and peace. Elias smiled, his eyes glimmering with wonder. See? He said gently. You can feel too. She nodded slowly, tears gathering in her eyes. Something her species hadn't done in centuries. It feels alive, she whispered. It is, Elias said. That's what it means to be human. But their quiet moment didn't last. The power stabilized again, and the field reappeared with a sharp hum, forcing them apart. Zira stumbled back, her breath shaking. Elias's hand fell to his side. For a long time they stood in silence, staring through the glass that divided them. But now that barrier felt weaker, not in strength, but in meaning. Sarah finally spoke. They don't understand what they're trying to take from you. Elias looked up. Then maybe we'll have to show them. Her heart raced. You mean? He nodded slowly. If they want to learn what emotions truly are, we'll teach them. Not with experiments, but with something they can never control. Sarah stepped closer, her voice trembling. And what is that? Elias smiled softly. Connection. That night, for the first time in centuries, two beings from different worlds shared something pure, not science, not control, but the fragile magic of understanding. Neither of them knew what the future would bring, but they both felt it, a bond forming between them, quiet but unbreakable. The colony might have seen him as a prize, but to Zira, Elias Ward had become something far greater, the first heartbeat of a forgotten world. The next cycle began with silence. But it was not the peaceful kind. It was the kind that hid something heavy, like a storm waiting to break. Zira had barely slept. She kept replaying the last moment when she and Elias had touched through the weak barrier. She could still feel his warmth, still hear his words echoing in her mind. Connection. But the overseers had noticed something. When Zira arrived at the research wing that morning, two guards were standing outside Elias's chamber. Their silver armor gleamed under the white lights, emotionless. Orders from the council, one of them said. The human is to be transferred to the central facility. Her chest went cold. Transferred? Why? His emotional responses are affecting you, the guard replied. They believe he has altered your stability. Zira's hands trembled slightly, the golden hue fading from her scales. He hasn't altered anything. He's teaching us what we wanted to know. That's the problem, the guard said simply. You were meant to study him, not feel. Before she could answer, they entered the room. Elias looked up, confused as they approached his cell. What's going on? He asked, standing. Zira stepped forward quickly. They're moving you, she said, voice shaking. They want to take you to the central core. Elias frowned. What happens there? Her silence was enough of an answer. Everyone knew what happened in the core. Subjects didn't come back. No, Zira said suddenly, turning to the guards. You can't take him. The overseer hasn't approved this. The taller guard glanced at her, his tone flat. The overseer gave the command herself. The world seemed to tilt. Zira's throat tightened. No, she wouldn't. But deep down she knew it was true. The overseer had warned her before. Emotion was corruption, and corruption spread fast. Elias looked at her quietly. Zira, it's okay, he said gently. You've done enough. She shook her head fiercely. No, you don't understand. If they take you there, they'll erase you. Everything you are, your memories, your soul, gone. I can't let that happen, she whispered. The guards began to activate the transport restraints. A thin silver band glowed around Elias's wrists. He winced but didn't resist. Zira's heart pounded. Every instinct screamed against the rules she'd followed all her life. But this time something stronger than duty filled her. Something human. Stop, she shouted. Her hands glowed bright gold and the color of defiance. The guards hesitated, startled by her sudden burst of emotion. No scientist had ever shown such energy before. Zira reached for the control pad, typing in an override code she wasn't supposed to know. The glass barrier around Elias flickered and fell. Zira, what are you doing? He asked, stunned. Saving you, she said, her voice breaking. You once told me that freedom means choosing your own path. This is mine. The alarm screamed. Red lights flashed through the room. The guards lunged toward them, but Zyra moved faster, hitting the emergency release on the chamber door. The air hissed as the locks disengaged. Go, she yelled. Elias hesitated only for a second before running out. Zyra followed, her heart racing. The hallways of the research wing stretched ahead, white, cold, endless. They ran past confused workers and blinking drones. The sirens echoed, warning the entire colony that a containment breach had occurred. Zyra led him down the lower tunnels, the forbidden ones, old corridors built before her generation was even born. Where are we going? Elias panted. There's a shuttle bay below the core, she said breathlessly. It hasn't been used in years. If we reach it, we can get outside the colony shield. He stumbled slightly. And then what? You'll be branded a traitor. She stopped for a moment, her eyes glimmering faint blue. Then I'll be free. With you. For a brief second, they stared at each other in the dim light, their breaths heavy. It wasn't just fear between them anymore. It was something far more powerful, faith. The colony AI's voice thundered through the tunnels. Unauthorized human detected. All personnel converge on sublevel 3. Zyra pressed a panel on the wall, opening a hidden door. This way. They slipped inside a narrow maintenance shaft. The sound of boots and mechanical drones filled the corridors behind them. Elias could feel his heart pounding, fear and adrenaline mixing with something fierce inside him. He wasn't just a captive anymore. He was alive. As they reached the final door, Zyra pressed her hand to the scanner. The system beeped, access denied, her breath caught. No, it should work. Elias stepped forward and looked at the lock. Maybe I can help. He gripped the edges of the panel and with a strained grunt pulled the cover off. Sparks flew. He crossed 2 glowing wires and the panel flashed green. The door slid open with a hiss. Zyra turned to him in shock. How did you... He smiled weakly. Old Earth training. Sometimes you just have to make things work. She laughed through her tears. You humans are impossible. He met her gaze. And you aliens are amazing. As they stepped into the dark bay, the world above them shook with alarms. But in that hidden place, surrounded by dust and starlight, there was something pure. 2 hearts, one human, one alien, had done what logic forbade. They had chosen each other. Outside, the colony prepared to hunt them. But Elias and Zyra were done running from fear. Now they were running toward freedom. The hidden bay smelled of dust and silence. Old shuttles lay in the dark, covered in layers of forgotten years. The air was still, heavy with secrets that time had buried. Zyra guided Elias through the shadows, her hands trembling as she activated the faint blue lights on the walls. One of the shuttles, small, old, but intact, came to life with a weak hum. This one might still fly, she whispered. Elias placed a hand on the hull. How long since anyone used it? Long before I was born, she said. It was built for exploration, before the council banned leaving the colony. He smiled softly. Guess we're bringing that rule back to life too. Zyra looked at him, and for the first time since she'd known him, she didn't see a test subject. She saw someone she believed in. The alarm still echoed faintly through the tunnels. The overseer would soon realize where they had gone. Drones would follow. Guards would search. Elias moved quickly, checking the shuttle's panels. He wasn't a pilot, but human instincts and desperation were strong teachers. Zyra worked beside him, rerouting the power through the old circuits. Her hands glowed gold as she used her bioelectric energy to stabilize the system. Your body can do that? Elias asked in awe. She smiled faintly. We were made to adapt, but I never thought I'd use it to break the rules. Sometimes breaking the rules is the only way to make something right, he said. Their eyes met for a moment. The hum of the engines grew louder, trembling like a heartbeat. Suddenly, the heavy door behind them groaned open. A beam of white light cut through the darkness. The overseer stood there, tall, cold, wrapped in shimmering armor that reflected the shuttle lights. Behind her, 2 guards raised their weapons. Zyra, the overseer said, her voice calm but sharp. Step away from the human, Zyra froze. Her pulse raced. You have done well in your studies, the overseer continued, but you have allowed emotion to poison your mind. Surrender now, and your sentence may be merciful. Zyra shook her head. You're wrong, she said, her voice trembling but strong. Emotion isn't poison. It's life. He showed me that. The overseer's eyes narrowed. Then you are lost. She raised her hand. The guards aimed their pulse rifles. Elias stepped in front of Zira. If you want her, you'll have to shoot through me. The overseer hesitated for a fraction of a second, not out of mercy but confusion. No one had ever spoken to her like that. No one had ever stood for someone else. Zira's voice broke the silence. Elias, get in the shuttle. I'll hold them off. No, he said firmly. We do this together. She looked at him, human eyes filled with defiance and faith, and something inside her heart shifted. Together, they dove into the shuttle. Energy bolts hit the walls, sparking fire and smoke. The bay roared with chaos. Zira slammed the hatch shut and powered the thrusters. The floor trembled as the engines ignited, shaking the old bay. Elias, hold on, she shouted. The shuttle lifted, tearing through the dust and debris. The overseer's voice echoed below. Stop them! But it was too late. With a blinding flash, the shuttle burst through the ceiling's old airlock and soared into the night sky. For the first time, Elias saw the planet from above. It was vast, glowing with blue clouds and green oceans. The colony, once a cage, was now just a dot of light beneath them. Zira looked out through the window, her golden eyes wide with wonder. It's beautiful, she whispered. I've never seen the world from up here. Elias smiled, his voice soft. This is what freedom looks like. The silence between them was no longer heavy, it was peaceful. She turned to him. Where will we go? He looked out at the stars beyond.
Anywhere but back. Her hand found his.
Warm, trembling, real. Do you think they'll come for us? Maybe, he said. But let them try. We'll keep running, keep living. And maybe we'll find others who still remember what it means to feel. Zira's chest ached, not with fear but with something she had no word for. The color of her skin shifted to a soft golden hue, the shade of hope. Hours passed as they drifted through the stars. The old shuttle groaned under the strain, but it held. They sat together, watching the galaxy unfold like a living dream. Elias closed his eyes for a moment. You know, he said quietly, I think that's what humanity was meant to do. To remind others, no matter how far we fall, what the heart still remembers. Zira rested her head against his shoulder. And what is that? She asked softly. He smiled. That we're all connected, not by laws or science, but by the need to care. She nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks, only the same strange human tears she had learned from him. Outside, the stars burned brighter. The ship moved on, carrying them toward an unknown horizon. They were fugitives now. One human, one alien, bound by something greater than any colony could understand. In the eyes of the overseers, Elias had once been a prize. But in the eyes of Zira he had become a teacher, a friend, and the first spark of something her people had forgotten long ago, the beauty of being alive.